Welcome to ACC Nation. I'm Jim Quist, and our special guest is the publisher of JerryRatcliffe.com. He's also the host of a new podcast on the same, and we'll touch base a little bit with Jerry Ratcliffe about that in just a few moments. But Jerry, thank you for joining us and talking a little bit about what's transpiring at Virginia in regard to Bronco Mendenhall.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me. It's been an exciting, jam-packed 24 hours for sure.
Exciting and jam-packed. That's the master of understatement. Bronco really made some big differences with this program, and I think it was implementing a way of doing things. And we can, watching his interview the other day, I got the impression that, a lot of what he does is guided by his faith. That didn't surprise me any. I have a lot of friends and even some family members who are LDS, so I get it. And he brought that with him from BYU and his assistants. So there was this mindset there. Talk to us a little bit about how that changed that program and started guiding it the way that it did.
Well, Jim, I think he had a system, a blueprint, and it worked for 11 years at BYU. They went to 11 straight bowls. If you examine some of those records, it's somewhat revealing in the fact that, as we all know, BYU has older players, more mature people, which obviously helps in football when you have 18-year-olds going up against 23, 24-year-olds or older sometimes. But, they won. One of the main reasons he left there was because he couldn't convince BYU to join a conference. He felt like future success was going to be difficult because you had no control of your schedule. Really, you had to take whoever you could get as an independent. And, one week they might be playing Notre Dame or Georgia Tech, or somebody like that. The next week they might be playing the Sisters of the Poor and Sisters of the Poor the second. Even though he averaged 10 or 11 wins a season out there, he didn't beat a whole lot of top 25 teams in the process. And so his record was a little bit skewed in that manner, but still, he was a successful football coach. He had a system that knew he could win with. And he brought that here and almost his entire staff and their families. I think when they got here, they had the most children of any staff in the country. They had like 30 or 40 kids or something like that, but very close-knit group. While they were close in Provo, they lived in different wards. Here, they all lived in the same ward, so they actually became closer and tighter, and his coaches became his best friends, and sometimes I don't know if that's really good or not. It's really hard to fire a friend or to reassign a friend. And they all said that they became much closer here than they ever were at BYU. So I think that was a challenge. Some people, after the Virginia Tech loss and the 4-game slide after being 6-2 and ending up 6-6, a lot of people wanted some heads to roll, not necessarily Broncos, although some did. They just felt like that he wasn't ever going to take the program any further than he had. It's hard to say. Maybe he could have, maybe he couldn't have. But I think one of the big problems that they never really could overcome was when they moved east. None of his staff, except for one guy that Marcus Hagens, that he held over from Mike London's staff, had any roots in the East, particularly in the state of Virginia. So recruiting in this state suffered mightily. It has only just started to turn the corner a little bit. And I think that has shown up on the field. particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Because if you look, I mean, 2 years ago, these same coaches took them to the ACC Coastal title, to the Orange Bowl, where they gave top 10 Florida a pretty good battle. Um, all the teams that they lost to this season were ranked or were to be ranked, except for Virginia Tech in the last game of the season. So that defense 2 years ago in 2019 was pretty darn good until it got banged up. They even still have some of those players on this year's team, a few, but I mean, that was an aggressive defense that they called Havoc, that obliterated the school record in quarterback sacks and hurries and all that stuff, and was pretty darn good against the run. They were almost impossible to run against, but over the last 2 years, that's deteriorated and became a real Achilles heel. He told us before the season, we're going to score a lot of points. And I said, well, you better, because you're going to give up a lot of points. And that turned out to be even more true than I thought. I think the fact that they never got a real strong foothold recruiting the state, had to go all over the country to find players, ended up biting them big time. And I blame that more for the lack of production on defense than anything else. And I think that reared its ugly head. They were able to get by a couple of games by simply outscoring people. I mean, they scored 49 points in one game and still got blown out. I think that was the demise of this program, really.
Would you say that this announcement, and we talked briefly about this between the two of us before we started recording, but to reiterate for the audience, would you say that this was a surprise that that Bronco did this when he did it, and that he did it at all?
Somewhat, Jim. We all knew after that Virginia Tech game that something had to happen, that this was going to define Carla Williams' tenure as AD at Virginia. Things have been fairly smooth sailing since she got here. Women's basketball program is a mess, and that was her hire. That's the only person she's really hired, and we expect something to happen there before the year's over. But the football program was riding high in 19. Last year was COVID, so nobody could really gauge what was going on. This year, while it was exciting football, that Virginia Tech game just left a really, really sour taste in Virginia's fan base. The football alumni were livid, probably as livid as I'm seeing them in a while. So we figured that Bronco was either going to have to get rid of a couple of people on his staff, which we all wondered how that was going to go, if he could do it. And if he didn't want to do it, would Carla make him do it? From what we understand, the day before the announcement came, Bronco had offered Anthony Poindexter the defensive coordinator's job, which meant he was getting rid of one or two of his defensive coordinators. He had co-coordinators. But apparently Poindexter did not respond. So that was on Wednesday afternoon. And Thursday afternoon, he called his staff together, told him he was resigning, then the players, then us, the media. So something happened overnight, and we're still trying to find out exactly what that was. Bronco said he wasn't pressured, that Carla asked him to come back, that the school president asked him to come back. I think he just had maybe it was a perfect storm to where maybe he felt like that this program wasn't going to move forward under the present circumstances. Maybe he was going to have a hard time finding the right people or a person to help him move it beyond what it was this year. They're going to lose a lot of people off of this year's team. Um, we don't know if Carla wanted more people gone. We haven't been able to find that out. And if maybe he balked and was forced out or just came to the decision, I don't want to get rid of more people. We don't know. No, the only thing we know is what he told us yesterday. Carla hasn't addressed the media, and I don't know that she will. So we're all kind of, I can't say that we were totally shocked because we knew something was going to happen. There's no way they could stand pat and survive. I can't say that we were shocked that Bronco decided that this was it. He said he just had thought about it for days. I'm sure it was hard to do while he was out recruiting the past few days, the past week. He said he felt like he needed a reset of his life, that he'd coached for 31 straight years. He'd only been married for 25, and that's all that his wife, Holly, and his 3 sons, who are all going to be out of the house next month. 2 of them already are. So they're empty nesters. And maybe it was just a reflection of his life, and that he needed to find something to reinvigorate him. Or, I mean, after that Virginia Tech game, usually after losses, Broncos usually, I mean, he's not happy about losing, but he's usually pretty fluid with his remarks and long-winded remarks with great explanations. After the Virginia Tech game, you could tell that something had been taken out of him. He was very somber. He gave us as short answers as he possibly could. It just wasn't the same, and we weren't sure how to perceive that. So the past couple of days, it's just been somewhat bizarre in the turn of events, and you know, maybe he did indeed need that to just kind of refresh his life and try to figure out where to go from here. Maybe come back as a coach somewhere else. Maybe getting more involved in the church. We're not sure, but I think it may have just been a perfect storm of all those things coming together, and it's a lot for one person to be able to sustain.
Jerry, I think you hit this right on the head from the standpoint of perfect storm, the way you've laid this out and the way it looks like it's transpired. What Bronco said that he reflected on Sunday, and then over the week, the other pieces that you've added in there to sort of flesh it out further for us. And there's something in the back of my mind that says maybe this was something that he had been thinking about, or some aspect that he had been thinking about for some time. Who knows? I guess we'll find out by following you.
I hope so. I hope I can give you those answers as we progress. But yeah, you know, he said he didn't have like any epiphany or anything, or had a series of epiphanies, but this season had to wear on him because there were so many ups and downs. And like I said, one of the nation's greatest offenses and one of the nation's worst defenses. There was so many ebbs and flows, so many emotional highs, and then disappointments. I mean, there were times where they'd score 40 and 50 points and still lose by a couple of touchdowns. But I'm sure it had to weigh on his mind a little bit. But he claims that after the day after the Virginia Tech game, that he just started thinking about, you know, where am I going? What's best for me and my family, maybe for the program. And Bronco doesn't do anything without some sort of a plan. He's a real thinker, and very into analytics and philosophy. He's a really smart guy and a really good guy. I like Bronco a lot. But I think he had to know that if they just stood pat, that this program wasn't going to get any better. We don't. He has a decent recruiting class coming in, but I don't know if it's enough to move the program forward or not. So it would be interesting to know what exactly went on in his mind, other than what he revealed to us. But um, I'm sure that you're right that he had to be thinking about it a little bit. I can't believe that it just rushed upon him on Sunday. Uh, I don't think that's how his mind works or anybody else's.
I would agree with that for sure. It also surprises me that at least he didn't share this. That he would not have something planned moving forward, something definitive, and it surprised me that he didn't share some glimpse of that. But I guess we'll find out as time goes on. Um, now, since we have you for a limited time, and I want to take up all your afternoon, especially since it's a Friday, just a couple of quick questions for you here. Where do the assistants, the coordinators, and where do they stand in this picture?
Well, they're all on their own, really. Believe it or not. I don't know if any of them will apply for the job or even be considered. Um, like I said, it's an incredibly tight knit group of people. Uh, I don't know if they're all going to fend for themselves or try to make some effort to stay. From reading some of the Twitters, it doesn't sound like that they feel like that they have a future here. Um, and Bronco said, that it was on him, that he's the one that convinced them to follow him to the east, and they were all pretty happy here, I think, from what we gather. But he realizes it's the nature of the game that if the head coach is gone, those under him, all those families are kind of left on their own. And I think he feels bad about that. But only time will tell. Whenever the new head coach comes in, if he wants to keep any of them or not. And you know how that goes. Normally, if a new head coach comes in, if he keeps anybody, it may be one or two at the most, because he wants his own people. Sometimes nobody. So I think all these guys are probably going to have to be looking for jobs. There's at least, except for I think the two Virginia holdovers, Marcus Higgins and Clint Centum. I think they will get considered. I'm sure Marcus Higgins will be retained by whoever takes the job. He's one of the best wide receivers coaches in this part of the country. But I imagine the new head coach is probably going to otherwise clean house. So I think Jamie Beck, the quarterback's coach, is an excellent coach, and somebody ought to snatch him up because he discovered Bryce Perkins and Brendan Armstrong and led them to excellence. Other than that, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where those guys end up.
Speculation says that there's a decision coming within 72 hours. Do you see it moving that quickly in replacing?
I do. I think anybody other than Anthony Poindexter is going to be a huge disappointment to the fan base. I know he's never been a head coach, but he's been coaching for 17 years. Everywhere he's been, he's made a difference. He's a fan favorite in Virginia. He's a legend. And he's a great guy on top of that. He gave the ultimate sacrifice when he was, after his junior year, when he was consensus All-American, ACC Player of the Year. Looked like he was going to be the next Ronnie Lott in the NFL, but he decided to stay his senior year and help this program advance. And lo and behold, suffered one of the most horrible knee injuries you'll ever see, and essentially ruined his professional future. So A lot of people love him just for the sacrifice he made. Um, it would be interesting because his co-defensive coordinator at Penn State is now the new head coach at Virginia Tech. So wouldn't that be something if the two co-coordinators at Penn State end up being rivals here in the state of Virginia? But I know the Virginia Football Alumni Club, who I work with a little bit in trying to help build their profile and strengthen their organization, are almost insistent upon bringing him back. They believe that he's the one guy that can unite the fan base, move the program forward, raise the money to for a new huge football complex, which is desperately needed. Bronco said Virginia had the worst facilities of any ACC team, any of the ACC members. That drive has stalled for the past year and a half. People feel like that he can come in and make the difference there, that he can recruit the state and hire people who can recruit the state and bring Virginia football back to the level that people expect. So maybe they won't hire him. Maybe he doesn't want the job. I don't know. But I think anybody other than him is going to be a huge disappointment. And that, and if it is him, I think it will be a quick hire.
They'll certainly have to earn their chops if they're going to take over that program, especially if they're not somebody who went to UVA. I think that's awesome, an incredibly awesome need for Virginia to have somebody who went there, who understands the state of Virginia. And as you point out, recruiting in the state of Virginia, there is so much talent here that is seemingly departing left and right to go to play in North Carolina. We've got some kids in my backyard who have all been shipped out to Notre Dame. And there is a ton of talent here that needs to stay in-house, to be a little bit of a homer.
Yeah, and you got to remember, he coached 11 years at Virginia before he moved on to Connecticut and Purdue and Penn State. He was on Al Grove's staff and Mike London's staff until he realized it was time to get out.
Yeah.
But he's paid his dues. I think he's ready for a challenge.
Sounds good. Jerry, tell us a little bit about the podcast. You've been doing it for a while now, but people who want to keep up with what's going on with Wahoos definitely need to subscribe to your podcast, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing there and how people can subscribe.
Yeah, sure, Jim. It's UVA centric. We talk to a lot of the big names from the past in all sports. Lengthy interviews, conversations, like you said, a lot more casual as a podcast than a radio show. And you can go as long as you want, which is good, especially for some of these guys because they like to talk. And we have coaches, present day, past day. We do recruits. And that's been exciting. We talked to all the new UVA basketball commitments for next year, all 4 stars. And we do just about everything, players, coaches, recruits. We do some stuff with the team doctors, believe it or not, to explain injuries and things of that nature. So we've gotten great response. It's always nice to have people like Tiki Barber or Thomas Jones or Barry Parkhill or Ralph Sampson, just any number of people. We even had a great one with Ann Holland, Terry's wife, telling stories. Sadly, I guess people know that Terry's suffering from dementia, and she was the first to actually expose that publicly. And she says, he's the same Terry. Just, if you see him, come up and tell him you love him and that sort of thing. So I think, if you're a Virginia fan and you don't listen to these, you're missing out because not only of information wise, but just some great stories from the past in Virginia athletic history.
It's certainly good stuff. And I encourage people to subscribe. And Also to subscribe to jerryradcliffe.com, because if you are looking for Virginia coverage, can't beat it. The Dean of Virginia sports coverage is Jerry Radcliffe, jerryradcliffe.com. Thank you, sir, for joining us and talking about Bronco Mendenhall and the state of Virginia football.
Glad to do it, Jim. I always enjoy our conversations, and anytime, I'm open.